Hi, my name is Zachary Angelette, and I just wanted to go over a little bit about what I've been working on. Um, I haven't made another video in a bit just because the thing I'm working on, I sort of basically want it very controllable through the UI, and that's the scope is kind of getting bigger. Um, so what did I want? I basically wanted a thing to generate the database. You put the table, you put how many fields, you type in the field, name, string, age, and whatever it is, you hit submit. And what that is supposed to do is go in your apps thing and then create a folder, create a file. So I gotta change this to this inside the template. Um, but it generates basically a database and not the values per se, but the field and data types. And for some reason, it didn't generate the table name, which still. So what I did sort of was what took me a little bit when I've been working on it, very little free time I've had, is basically you create a bunch of fields and it's just up to 11 and then 11 types, so to speak, for that form. And you kind of put into a data struct and then you have it have fields. Although I eventually changed it to have a table one as well. And this is just mock data as if it was typed in. And you set up the struct. You do reflect, and a lot of times they say don't use reflect. Well, in order for me to read out these structs, field names, that's these are specific fields, even though they're fields of the struct. Um, and that took me a little bit to figure out. One thing I also did learn was not to use ampersand inside my code. It worked here, if you run it, generates it. Um, but for whatever reason, my project didn't like it. Um, but you do a for loop through the structs fields, each one going down. If it's equal to nothing, or an empty string or whatever, then just keep moving on. When it finally, if it isn't empty, grab that field and throw it into um, D, which is the data, and then the field. We'll just call it the field of the data. Now we're getting three fields in. But yeah, and this would be how you would collect all the fields, collect all the types, and then just kind of spit it out. This took me a bit to figure out with the actual um, template syntax. So you have to range over then the fields, the types, to make it spit out. Well, this would would have been not the value, but the name of the field, and then the type, and then put not null afterwards. I could change that, but anyways, the point being, I mean, normally this would be like name, you know, and yeah, see, um, but you have to range through these, kind of follow the index, is you're going through this D, which is the data that then is getting these slices of the data, and the other part is getting the length of the fields. Why do you need the length of the fields? Well, mainly because this little guy right here, this little comma that appears, and Apparently it's still kind of doing it here, even though I removed it my own. Yeah, it's kind of weird. It works in my regular code for a reason. If length is equal to the index, the length of fields, do nothing else. Do that. Oh, wait. It's because what it's going to do for each one, isn't it? Let's see what happens. Oh, it did it. Where it took it out. Okay. I guess not as hard as I was thinking. Anyways, it took me a bit to figure all that out. So when I finally was able to, inside my project, which just to gloss over what's going on, so it's not just a big mess of things. This is the app that it generates. Um, this is the config, the dashboard, which is the dashboard that you get to do stuff in. Extras just screenshot stuff, that, you know, aesthetic is and all that. So what we were trying to do, or what I was trying to do, is create this folder, create this file, then generate the code inside of it. So in order to do that, I did make it as a put because when you, this might make it more confusing. The program's getting pretty big, but it's not out of my mental model whatsoever, which is weird. Usually when someone gets all these, you know, I would go, just have no problem whatsoever, like not even a little bit. Um, JavaScript, I probably would have a lot of problems. um, anyways, uh, when you click this, you know, you have this form, which this is the form, here's table, here's fields, blah, blah, blah. When you click create form, which is basically this, it shows these fields instead. So it gets the value of how many numbers you typed in, hides everything, and then shows uh, that that field. So really, this show fields thing is not a submit. It's just uh, some so you keep going on the form, so to speak, and eventually you hit the submit. And uh, if the value is above 10, because I only had 11 of those fields here, you can't do over 11 because I only had 11 per thing. This is the JavaScript, jQuery, whatever you want to call it. And then you for loop through this, and you create how many fields, which are these things basically. They're not, they're statically, they're dynamically, because you have to guess when you type in 3, 4, or 5, or whatever, it has to create that many fields. So that's what I did here. I just did the ID plus the index for the name and the ID. So, and then T is for type. Should have done, oh yeah, F for field. That's why on these things it's field type. I still gotta do more with the values, or maybe I'll make that a new page that then shows the columns in the database, and you just enter in. Could you just do this inside of a database itself? Yeah, you could, but my whole thing is so you have it all right here, so you don't have to go somewhere else. You don't have to use another tool. You don't have to install this, that, and other thing. Just do it all right here. You just click it, you do it, you move on. At least that's the premise. Uh, Still, it's work in progress. It's not quite there yet. That's why I haven't really uploaded in a bit, just because usually I show some full product thing, but it's been a while, and I've been with my little time I've had to actually work on this stuff. I'm just gonna run it down. Um, and that's pretty much it as far as I got so far. So when you hit submit, it then you go to handler, put, you go to create database, and so this is a route that takes that certain URL from the form and submits it, and you create that field with all those field and types, a new one. You bind it to the form or from the form. The F is all those values. So you have to worry about how many you have or whatever. And it won't bind necessarily. Well, it'll make them empty. And then this function runs. And this is what creates the file or updates the app file, which is the main one. Finds this comment, creates this function so that when the function is there and you run the app, it then creates everything. It does create the import for it. Then this makes the folder, this makes the file, and then I showed you with the code what all this is doing. And we go into here, and this just shoots it out to the file itself. This thing is the actually templated text that appears. It should have made a table, but I'll have to run the debugger to see why this ain't actually getting the value. Did it? Did it? Yeah, it did leave that last comma. So what we did in that file was add this without it between else. Or no, wait, yeah. So it creates it, the last one without the comma. And then what's taking up even more of my time is I create a function. Where are you? I didn't flesh this out yet. There's just one thing at a time I was doing. Data. I didn't put anything in it though. I literally just put it on there and I forget. Let's spell it. Oh, yeah. It's creating a function that actually is at the start of the server. This guy right here. And yeah, it's right. It's in the database stuff. It checks whether or not that database URLs, these aren't doing anything. They're something that are left over from me trying different things and trying to figure it out a little bit in my head. And it checks whether or not it's there. If it doesn't exist, then create it and stuff. Although I gotta probably change this to URLs. What I did? Oh, I wonder if I didn't save this. That's probably why I should anyway again. And then it creates a table within that database, which is this one. and yeah, which I haven't run it yet, so it'll create it when I do, I think. Or, yeah, I'm still fleshing it out as I'm going along. This is stuff that I literally just did, and I had a whole bunch of other stuff going on, so I had to pick it up and drop it, and pick it up and drop it. But yeah, and so I'm just basically the point is that I'll generate the database on its own when the program first runs, or checks whether or not it's there, and then that will save the database stuff within the fields from here with these. Oh, it didn't save my table. Oh, boo. Well, it did save that part, but it didn't save the part. Oh, it did. Yeah, this is another part I had to figure out because I was like, okay, well, it goes through each of these are supposed to be the fields, these are supposed to be the types, and then, well, where am I going to put this table? Because I need the table in order to generate it so that it knows the templated code. So it's not hard coded. Some that the user can put into the form and then have the table name. So what I did was I just did this, and then I started to index at 1. And so this D, the data, oh, that's what I did wrong, I think. This data doesn't have the table. Oh, it does. And then this doesn't necessarily need it. Data is the only thing that needs it. Yeah, that's the only thing that would need it, not actual struct. So this doesn't do anything. Therefore, I don't need to start from 1. Yeah, that's been tired. Uh, but yeah, so that's basically kind of what I've been working on and what I've been doing. Hopefully that wasn't too boring for you. Um, hopefully I'll have it fleshed out in a week or two, sort of. Just been hacking at it an hour or two before work every third day or whenever it is. I'm not too tired or whatever. But yeah, I had a full mental model. I mean, this thing's kind of big, you know what I mean? And yeah, I pretty much know exactly what's going on. It's great. It's great, even though it's huge, and I don't even have the slightest worry that it's going to get too big. Like, not even a little bit. One thing that I did do differently from the last video was, which might look a little different now, is I made a generator folder and I put gen in, put all the generator files into it, and then the template files. So it's its own thing, sort of. And then I think the handler was the same. But yeah. So this I kind of worked out to be the generator spot. Is it? I mean, technically, all the application really does is generate stuff and then watches things. That's really it. I mean, I mean, the effect of that is that you get to have an app that has pages and scripts you can add to it and databases you can generate and do whatever. Eventually, I'll put in widgets and all that, but that is something that I don't want to do widget level. I want something that because there's a focus on between like all the JavaScript frameworks tend to help you do JavaScript stuff and they have their own templates and all that jazz. But I feel like if I make widgets themselves, that sort of cuts out the developer experience as to why you'd even use this. as opposed to, people who don't code. So I want to find that middle ground. And, I was thinking Go functions. And so you would just call them in the templates and they would do things and they can generate little parts of stuff. I feel like that's not very interactive though. I want interactive, like that's the point of a UI, right? Um, just doing widgets, I don't think people care that much. Um, so finding that middle ground between the widgets and the ability to customize things, I think is, I might have to make some kind of option for maybe most used things that would be Go functions, and you would choose them and add them to your template or to the page. I don't know. You'd be able to make your own functions inside of a box and then have it generate it so that you can then use it inside the template. That, I don't know if that's too low. I don't know. But yeah, those are decisions I gotta make later on. Right now I'm just trying to do the database stuff and the point is to be able to allow you to call data into your templated pages and just move on then. And so you could maybe have feeds of data, you can maybe create your own data, you don't have to code it, and you can just call it up inside your page. But I gotta start somewhere with the database, and that's what I'm doing. So if you have any questions or anything, please let me know. All right, thank you.